What's up, my know-it-alls? Well, it's a very special day here at the Know-It-All Nation. Specifically, it is the birthday of Star Trek: The Next Generation. 36 years ago, 1987 today, the very first episode, Encounter at Farpoint, aired, and I wanted to take an opportunity to talk about it, so I'm gonna do a little something special. Do me a favor, stick around, like the video, subscribe, and I'm telling you, you're gonna have a lot of fun because today, we're gonna go back in time. I'm 8 years old, and it is the very first episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, so we're going to treat it like that is the episode we're reviewing. Okay, friends, welcome to the very first episode of Mr. Know-It-All Reviews. Specifically, we're going to be reviewing the brand new pilot for this new reboot of Star Trek called Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's a fun little reboot. I kind of dig it, and I think it's one of the things that when you talk about through it, you start to kind of get a feel for it. But I mean, let's get into it because there's a whole lot of awesomeness. I kind of thought it was pretty rad. I mean, the episode's got everything you'd want from Star Trek, plus they really took their time to try to, make everything feel like old Star Trek. I don't know, I guess that old show, the original series? Yeah, the original series. And And since they're gonna, but I wanted to really get into this thing, and so let's talk a little bit about it, okay? So I'm not sure how you felt, but I know that when I saw and heard that music, and obviously those of you listening keenly at home are gonna remember that was the music from the original motion picture. The ones they've been using in the movies and whatnot, yeah, that was the theme song. It's their end credits music, but that's where they got their theme song from. So, I mean, still, whatever. This British actor named Patrick Stewart has been brought over. He's classically trained. All of the actors are somewhat familiar. Anybody who loves watching, who's grown up watching PBS, will recognize he's currently at the helm. He's got this thing on his face. He's blind, played by LeVar Burton, Geordi LaForge. What a fun character. You never really seen a character like that with some sort of ocular impediment thing, so hopefully something fun comes of that. The characters are all kind of unique, and you can definitely tell this was a setup episode, meaning we got to spend a little bit of time with each of them. It was a two-part episode, and so the first part aired last week, the second part aired this week. I'm really excited having seen the thing. I'm excited for where it's going. I know there's been a bunch of criticisms out there by various people when it comes to Star Trek, and so I'm so excited. I went out and go ahead and sewed my own uniform, got myself ready, made my own comm badge, and I'm ready to go. So yeah, man, I enjoyed it. So the episode starts with the Enterprise on its maiden voyage. Specifically, they're gonna go pick up some people from an outpost, appropriately named Farpoint. And when the couple of times because we kind of cut back and forth between Farpoint and what's happening, but Picard gets introduced to the ship. You get this nice long walkthrough of the ship. It's gorgeous, by the way. And there are apparently families aboard this ship, which I found pretty interesting. They spent a lot of time with each character setting up for us what's to come. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for it. The funny thing, so a couple of interesting things about the uniforms, they've switched departments. So it used to be in I guess again I'm gonna just call it the original series, but in the original series they had command wore gold. Well, in this one, operations and engineering apparently were gold. And the red shirts, which are always security, security is gold also. And so command is red. It's very confusing, but I think we'll get the hang of it over time. And so Riker he's gonna be the commander, and he's this clean-cut guy. Jonathan Frakes plays him, and he has a very Captain Kirky type swagger. They've done something interesting in that they've split up, like if Picard's the captain, but he seems like an older sort of statesman-y type person. Riker is the young swaggery type, and there's even this one shot where he asks for directions to someplace on the ship, and this one officer checks him out, which I was like, really? The whole thing really centers around the fact that on the way to Farpoint, there's an encounter they get to meet a super being, an alien and of immense power, and they have this one character named Troy, she's an alien race they just introduced called the Beta Zeds? Yeah, the Beta Zeds. And she is not telepathic. What's the when you empathic? She's empathic, and so she's always. It's so funny. I made the joke to my wife that she's basically a walking mood ring because she's all like, pain, such pain, or later on she's like, it's so happy and giddy. This whole thing, you'll know. When you got to watch the episode. And so the whole idea behind all of this is that they get put on trial by this big, amazing person. So it calls itself Q. I don't know if you remember. It reminds me of the Squire of Gothos episode from the original series, and it's this being who could just make things happen. I guess you call him omnipotent or omnipowerful, whatever, but he's just kind of doing stuff, and he accuses humanity of being dirty and terrible and whatever else, and then proceeds to say, and apparently Picard keeps giving him ideas, because he's like, oh, well, you need to put us on trial for whatever else, and this and that. And so he's like, that's a brilliant idea, and he puts them on trial, and sends them to an old-style court setting, and ultimately he's like, look, judges, based on what we are now, and he goes, okay, fine, I'll do that. I'm going to do exactly that, this mission. So Picard's giving him fun ideas the whole way around. From there, they get to, then we cut to Farpoint, and when you're at Farpoint, apparently all kinds of magical stuff is happening, things that are unexplainable. So like, Riker goes in to talk to the guy who's running the place, and the guy who's running the place he's being sort of, I don't know, definitely uncool. A complete wastoid, if not a butt face. I mean, the guy's terrible. The kind of guy who's so gnarly. I was just like, Riker, why don't you just tell him to eat your shorts, bro? The way you're just sitting here, literally, he's utterly detestable. I'm not a fan. So this guy, at one point, he offers Riker some fruit. Riker's like, I'm gonna show you apples. And next thing you know, like magic, a bowl of apples shows up. And I'm thinking, must have something to do with Q, because he's the only one so far that we see that's just making things happen like magic. Then they proceed to spend time, once the ship gets there, they go up. Picard's testing him right out the gate. I was kind of hoping, so unlike the Star Trek, the original series, not Star Trek The Next Generation, unlike that show where we kind of jumped in knowing, like Kirk, Spock, all those people, they knew each other. We're getting to see these people at the ground floor, and it's actually a pretty smart decision in my opinion, but we're getting to see them sort of start this whole journey. Anyway, between this and that, Q keeps coming in, he keeps trying to test them, and ultimately it becomes this whole thing. Boy, did they lay the melodrama on thick. It is like, the episode, by the way, is written by veteran writer DC Fontana. It says and Gene Roddenberry. DC Fontana, those you recognize, has written some of the most memorable episodes of the old series, the original series, if you will. And so, seeing that someone at the helm familiar, it was very comforting for me to be like, all right, cool, we'll give this a shot. And sure enough, this whole thing turns out to be about, we get like space jellyfish. And it was interesting to say the least. I mean, I thought they look so radical. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe this whole thing. And this guy, come to find out, the actual place is built on this alien jellyfish that apparently crashed and needs power. The planet makes power geothermally, and so they've been kind of in trickles giving it power as food. While meanwhile, it can essentially do what replicators and transporters do, which is how it makes stuff appear for you. So its mate, or another one of it, comes from deep space and comes down, and that's when Q shows up and he's all like, go ahead, kill it, do this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. And Picard the whole time is like, whoa, what? So they go over, they find it's similar thing. Anyway, they ultimately find out how this whole thing went down, and they show it mercy, and that's when Picard whips around and he's all like, get off my ship. It won me over. I didn't know what to think of this show when they announced it, but I'm convinced. So I can't wait to see the next episodes. They look like they're going to be really fun. Everybody is cool. I can't wait to see the character of Data, who's an android. I cannot wait to see what becomes of him. They have our first kid character, which I thought was really cool. I know that back in the day, they used to say Chekhov was like the answer to the 60s and the Beatles and the Monkees and whatnot. This kid, I think, is going to be really fun. He's played by they got a big-time actor. I say that even though he's a kid. Will Wheaton is his name. He was in that teen angsty movie Stand By Me, which I thought was really cool. And so they got some gravitas in terms of, hey, this guy is an actual actor in this thing, but he's kind of goofy in the beginning, whatever. So, all right, guys, well, let me know what you guys thought. I would really love to talk more about this. I can't wait to see you guys next week. We'll talk again soon. Bye. There you go. Now you know. And if knowing is half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. That was so much fun. What is the Know-It-All Index rating for this episode? Just for the sake of having fun, I'm going to be very honest. It was long, it was arduous, and clearly they were trying to just flop out as much as they could to be like, oh my God, please, there, guys, you're gonna love the show. Please love the show. Everything from showing us the melodrama with, you have Tasha Yar, who's like standing up for everything and pontificating in the old court, to, Worf being overly Klingon, to literally we never could reconcile back in the day Data. Because apparently Data just they switched him on and he was going, and they switched him on last week. They didn't, but that's how it came across. He's only just now discovering everything, even though he's been alive long enough to have gone to the academy, gotten his degree, the whole thing. So there were a lot of early things, and plus of course the outfits, which, not flattering as they were. Deanna Troi, thank God she became more than the walking mood ring. But ultimately, each of these characters, if you're watching this, Mrs. Know-It-All, she sees that scene with Data whistling, the one that we saw again in Picard, season 3. And she goes, well, now I understand why that scene mattered so much. And I'm like, the fact that you can follow everything back. And then later on, when the big reveal of Farpoint Station being the alien jellyfish, and then she goes, this is just like the ones that were birthed in Picard. I said, dude, Terry Matalas knew what he was doing. So yeah, man, I super very much loved these things. But I have to be very honest, this episode would probably today have been a 6. 6 out of 10. The acting was bad, the VFX were as good as they could possibly be. But at the end of the day, I'm so happy that it only went up from there. But as birthdays go, God bless you, Next Generation. Mwah! Happy birthday, my friends. Hopefully you guys are enjoying an episode of The Next Generation today. If you're not, give one a watch. I know that I intend to go watch Picard again, only because now that Mrs. Know-It-All has seen the origins for me, I want her to go ahead and I want to revisit the end, because I feel like even for her, it's going to matter that much more. The fact that Q started there and ends there. So, all right, guys, comment below. Let me know what you thought of the original Next Generation episode, Encounter at Farpoint. If you were there firsthand, I was only 8 years old, to be fair. But if you were there firsthand, let me know how excited were you? How pessimistic were you? The news articles and stuff were all over the road. And at the end of the day, it sounded an awful lot like people today when new Star Trek has been announced. Huh. That being said, guys, we're all Trekkers, Trekkies, lovers of Star Trek. We'll talk again very soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all.